My name is Blanche. I am 82. And that is probably all that can be said about me as a person. Everything else has remained somewhere in the faded past, between cigars, business suits, and loud words that had weight. Now I am just an old shadow, creeping past the windows of those who do not need me. My house stands on the outskirts of the city. Once it was a villa, the pride of my youth. Today it creaks, as if its very walls are tired of holding me. The wallpaper is peeling off like skin from memory. In the kitchen a silence that hums like a bell in an empty church. The refrigerator hums louder than anyone I know. Sometimes I deliberately leave the radio on so as not to hear myself. Children? Successful. Busy. Always. In a meeting. Calls once a month. No matter how convenient it is. Hello, Dad. Everything okay? We can't do it now. We'll call later. Then it never comes. They live in a world without me, even though they grew up in my hands. I remember teaching them to stand when they fell. Now they turn away when I stagger. Grandchildren? Oh, they're a whole different breed. They barely greet each other. Their eyes are always on the screen. I'm like an old, uncomfortable piece of furniture that hasn't found a place in a new design. They get annoyed when I ask them something. Grandpa, not now. And when? In the store? They can't see me. The young saleswoman asks, "Who's the last one?" I say, "I was." She looks through me. "Oh, okay. Next one." As if I were a ghost whispering in their ear that no one can hear. In the hospital, it's even worse. The young doctor, with a condescending look, says through his teeth, "Your age, Mr. Blanche, is a diagnosis in itself. We'll prescribe something to make it easier." Make what easier? My existence? Every day begins the same way, and ends even worse. I get up at 5, a habit that has never disappeared. I shine my shoes that I have nowhere to put on. I read a newspaper that doesn't say a word about those who truly remember what honor is. I sit on the veranda for hours, listening to the wind play with dead leaves, how life plays with me. I began to talk to myself. At first quietly, then louder. I answer myself, because no one else answers. I laugh without laughing. The tears no longer flow. They have dried up like a river whose source has been blocked. Something new has appeared in me. No old. Very old. It has always been there, only it has fallen asleep. It is bitterness. But not the kind that devastates, but the kind that sharpens. I picked up the old diary again. It once had plans, projects, notes about contracts. Now I write names there. And dates. I don't know yet why. But each name is like a scar. Son Merrick. Daughter Alina. Grandson Ilya. Saleswoman. Doctor. Neighbor who pretends not to hear my good morning. Every day is like a deeper and deeper descent into some dark mine where there is no more oxygen. I hear a knock. It's not a heart. It's a clock. My time doesn't pass, it flows like poison. And in this silence I understood for the first time. They think I'm gone. That I'm weak. That I'm a burden. But they forgot, old age is not the end. It's experience, memory, and a choice. I'm not a victim. I'm the one who waits. And if you make the old wolf feel hungry, prepare to face his teeth. I was a storm. And I didn't ask permission to enter the room. I was born in a difficult year, 1943. As a baby, my mother kept me in the basement while bombs exploded over the roofs. I survived, and from that time on, it was as if the whole world owed me a debt. And I demanded it, step by step, down to the last penny. I had nothing, but I had willpower. I remember myself at 20, skinny, stubborn, with hands rubbed against the asphalt. I washed floors during the day and counted every penny at night. At 27, I had my first company. At 30, I already had a chain of warehouses. At 40, I had half the city by the throat honestly, legally, with reason. Everyone who shook my hand knew. My word was concrete. I didn't threaten, I decided. I didn't buy, I convinced. Then I was the voice at the table, the head in the office, the person they called at 2 in the morning because they knew he would help. My wife Katerina was my world. Beautiful, with a voice that sounded like music. We raised 2 children. I gave them everything. Private schools, trips, apartments, business connections. But most importantly, an example. I didn't come home drunk, but tired. I didn't hit, I didn't scream, I didn't cheat. I taught them to keep their backs straight. Not to be afraid. To tell the truth even if you're trembling. In business, I lost more than many have seen in their lives. Competitors betrayed, partners stole, the state stifled. But I never broke. There was a period when I almost lost everything. 1998. I was sitting in a dark office, with a broken phone and bills that ate up the air. And I got up. Again. Because I couldn't do it any other way. I survived where young people gave up. Because I knew, if you lower your head, you'll be wiped out. And I didn't lower it. Katerina died 10 years ago. Cancer. She held my hand until the very end. She asked me to take care of the children. I swore. And now they don't even have time to listen to how my back hurts, or what I dreamed about today. And I think, did I really teach them only to take? I remember one night. My son asked, "Dad, have you ever been afraid?" I answered, yes. But fear is like cold water. It can splash you, but not drown you, if you know how to swim. I taught them to swim. But when I started to drown, no one threw a lifebuoy. And I remember every one of their childhood illnesses, every birthday, every sleepless night. And here I am. I sit alone. They live. I exist. No one asks me for advice. Although I knew more than their internet gurus. My hands built. My forehead thought. My heart loved. And now all this has become unnecessary. And I ask myself, where does authority disappear when wrinkles take away youth? Why is strength only muscle, and not memory and experience? When did children stop looking at me like a mountain and start looking at me like ballast? I'm not a saint. I was wrong. Sometimes I shouted. Sometimes I pressed harder than I should have. But I always acted out of love. For their sake. Now all that's left are the covers of old folders, yellowed newspaper clippings, awards that fall like dust. And the silence that doesn't just resonate, it cuts. But memory doesn't die. It's like a stone at the bottom of a river. The pressure from above is enormous, but it's still there. And there's still fire in this memory. And if someone neglects it, they will get burned. Because I was a storm. And a storm can sleep for a long time. But it remembers the way back. They thought I was silent because I had resigned myself. But I just listened. The last 6 months have been like a prison without bars. Only instead of guards, there is indifference. She doesn't scream. She doesn't hit. She simply doesn't see you. Last week I called my son. For the first time in 3 months. "Hi, Merrick. It's me." "Hi, Dad. I'm at a meeting now, then." "Listen, Then, Dad." Click. I sat with the phone in my hand for another 5 minutes, as if something else could happen. It didn't. In the evening, I opened my diary and wrote, "Merrick, September 19th, 1:06 p.m. Not listening. I started writing everything down. At first, automatically. Then, consciously. Because even if I'm alone, I'm a witness. And every witness is a potential judge. Grandson Ilya. He's 22. We used to make clocks together, remove the back covers, watch how everything moves, how each gear has its own rhythm. Now he comes once a month if Mom makes him. One day I asked, "Ilya, do you remember that engraved clock?" He looked at me, grimacing, and said, "Why do you old people always talk about some gears? Nobody's interested in that." I was silent. And he added, "Maybe you'll sell the house and move into a nursing home? At least they'll take care of you there." I didn't say anything. I just wrote in my diary, "Ilya, October 2nd, 6:27 p.m. He said, "Nobody's interested." I remember the nursing home. The worst thing is the doctor. I left because the pressure was excruciating. My legs were getting tired. You're 82. What did you want? An elderly organism. The body is wearing out. But it hurts. Everything hurts, Mr. Blanche. And it hurts me to listen to you, to be honest. Take the ointment. Next. Next. Like a curse. I wrote again. Dr. Semenov. October 10th. 11:50. Next. I had a moment of weakness. I went to a bench near the market. I just wanted to sit among the people. I saw a woman struggling with a package. I got up, went over, helped. She didn't even say thank you. And a little later I slipped myself. The packages with medicine fell. People walked by. A guy and a girl laughed. Oh, another one fell apart. And they left. Silently. Like the wind. And I stood, looking at the pharmacy boxes rolling on the asphalt, and felt something click inside me. Like the mechanism in a watch that hadn't moved for a long time. Not resentment. Not shame. No. It was an awakening. I came home. I sat down. And I felt a strange feeling. I don't want to endure it anymore. I won't scream. I won't beg. I won't humiliate myself. I will play. The house became quieter. The silence stopped being empty. It became alive. As if the room itself was waiting for me. I will remember who I am. I took out an old box of photographs. I saw myself in a suit, meeting with mayors, with influential people, with those who shook my hand then. I saw my children when they were little holding on to my finger. And I wrote in my diary, I created them. I raised them. And now they are trampling on my shadow. So be it. But the game is not over yet. The next day I looked through my old contacts. People whom I had pulled out of the mud at one time. People who owed me more than just a thank you. Not for physical revenge. No. For precise, surgical retribution. I don't want to hit. I want to show the mirror. And to do so that they have to look into it. And they will look into it. They laughed, and I remembered. This day began like all the others. Autumn. The air was crisp, like old leather. The streets were covered with leaves that no one was cleaning up, as if the city itself was tired of being clean. I decided to go out. There was something in me that morning, not a desire, but a need. I put on a raincoat, a little old, but still in shape. I put on leather boots, polished to a shine. I still respect myself, even if the world no longer respects me. I went into a store, an ordinary one on the corner. I bought bread, tea, some medicine. The packages were heavy. For a young hand, a trifle. For me, a challenge. I went out, taking my time. At the pedestrian crossing, I was pushed, not hard, but contemptuously. A young man in a hoodie. "Watch where you're going, Grandpa," he grumbled. I almost fell. One of the packages tore, the pills scattered on the asphalt. I bent down, slowly, carefully. My hands were shaking. "Excuse me. You couldn't," I said to two passers-by. They stopped. They looked and laughed, but he's still talking. Isn't he the one who reads the newspaper by the post office by chance? He thinks he's important. Well, he managed it himself, pick it up himself. And we left. The laughter remained in the air, like dirty smoke. I stood, and I no longer felt ashamed. Something inside me clicked, like a broken lock that finally opened. It was an awakening, not instantaneous, not sudden, but complete. My heart beat evenly. My gaze became cold. I no longer felt weak. I felt clear. I collected the packages. I came home. I put everything on the table and smiled. Not out of joy, out of clarity. In the silence of the room, I said aloud, "That's it. You made your choice. Now I'll make mine." I sat down at my diary again. I looked through the entries. I wrote down key dates, names, phrases that cut deeper than a knife. Then I took out an old black address book. There were numbers that can't be found on the internet. Names that remained in the shadows. People I once crossed paths with. Some from the criminal world, some from the corridors of power. All of them are debtors. And it's time to remind everyone who I am. I didn't plan to kill. I'm not a psychopath, not an avenger in a hoodie. I'm a strategist. I'm a memory. I contacted Milan, a former operative, now a private detective. I once saved him from prison. With Tkachenko, a former IT guy with flexible hands and a dark sense of humor. With Nina, she used to work in the city council, now in the tax office. I didn't ask for favors. I reminded them of old debts. And each of them answered the same, "What should I do, Blanche?" And I said, calmly, without haste, "I don't need noise. I need a game. Merrick, my son, has a business. Problems with documents. One wrong request, and they'll come to him with an inspection. Someone will, accidentally, give the financial report to journalists. Alina, the daughter, has a lover. Her husband will find out, and he will do everything to leave her with nothing. Ilya, the grandson, plans to move abroad. What if something is wrong with the passport? Or a strange entry will appear in the database? I'm not making it up. I'm just pressing the buttons that I once created. I'm not a storm. I'm the calm before the storm. I'm not visible. But everything is starting to fall apart. Connections are breaking. Words become weapons. Silence is oppressive. I arrange situations where each of them looks in the mirror and sees themselves there and can no longer look away. I sit in a chair, the same one they once played in when they were little. I hold them in my hands again, not with my fist, but with my mind. This is not revenge. This is correcting the balance. I didn't touch them, but each of them felt the touch. The plan was not perfect. It was well thought out. I started not with actions, but with data. I made a map of the weaknesses of everyone who humiliated me. I knew people are not afraid of the truth, but of realizing who they have become. The first was Merrick, my son. He was never evil, just cold, closed in his own world. He built the company, partly on my connections, partly on his own mind. But it always seemed to him that I was too old to understand what modern business was. I contacted Tkachenko. He found copies of the tender documentation with very slippery nuances. One letter, and the newspaper was happy to publish the investigation. There was nothing directly criminal, but enough to hit the reputation. In parallel, someone from an anonymous source informed his wife about certain random evenings in hotels after meetings. Although everything looked legally, the woman believed, and left him with the children, refusing to continue the restaurant life. Merrick called me, for the first time in 6 months. "Dad, did you hear? This is terrible. The press, Larissa, everything is falling apart." I listened, silently. For the first time, he spoke like a boy. He was looking for support again, and found emptiness. Alina, my daughter. Tender in childhood, proud in youth, cold in maturity. Her marriage is a decoration. Her reality is a lover 15 years younger. I knew this a year ago, but I kept quiet. Now, I am not silent. I called one of her old friends, the one she once betrayed for the sake of her career. And then, Alina's husband. All I did was send a photo. No signature. No comment. The result? A breakup, loud, public, financially devastating. Her image of the ideal woman, mother, professional, crumbled like paint in the rain. Grandson Ilya. He was going to immigrate. He wrote a lot on social networks about the old generation that doesn't understand anything in life. I waited for the moment when he submitted documents to study abroad. And then contacted an old acquaintance from the consulate. They didn't refuse. There was a technical error in the database. His request was lost. When he called, he was refused. Despair, confusion, anger. He wrote to me, "Grandpa, what's happening? Why is everything falling apart?" I didn't answer, because they should have felt not my strength, but their fragility. The saleswoman from the store, the one who once ignored my good day, was fired. The reason? The client wrote a complaint. Not me. But I knew who would write and when. The doctor who threw me, "It will pass by itself," received an unscheduled checkup from the management. Not my hands, but my threads. And it all looked like a coincidence. I was just a spectator, a shadow on the edge of the stage. But everyone who had ever despised began to look around. They couldn't understand where the cold was coming from. And I sat in an armchair drinking tea and watched as balance returned. I didn't feel joy. It wasn't a celebration. It was a correction. My house was no longer empty. It had become a headquarters. There was no longer loneliness in it. Only dignity, the kind they were trying to kill in me. And you know what's strange? They started coming. Carefully. First with calls. "Hello, Dad, how are you?" Then with gifts. With apologies disguised as concern. But I am not the Blanche I used to be. I do not push away. But I do not reach out either. I have learned not to forgive, but not to punish out of anger. My steps are not revenge. This is a lesson. And it continues. They learn to see me. And this is the best revenge of all. The windows of my house are lit up again in the evening. Not from the TV, from the lamps that I turn on myself. Not for anyone. For myself. I read the newspapers again, not to distract myself, but to know how the world that once neglected me lives. I make coffee again, not from a machine, but truly, with the smell of thyme. I live again. And I live not as a shadow, but as a person who is better not to underestimate. I am not applauded. I have not received letters of gratitude. No television program has invited me to tell my story. And thank God. Because this is not a story for a show. This is a story of a reminder. I taught them that old age is not a disadvantage. It is not a sentence. It is a position that has its own strength. That silence is not always consent. That if you ignore the one who gave you everything, he can regain his power. And not with noise, but with reason. My children are now careful with their words. They come more often. I don't know if it's because of fear or shame. I don't ask. It's enough for me that they can hear me now. Ilya sat down next to me once. Without a phone. "Grandpa, how did you endure it all?" I stared out the window for a long time. And then I answered, "Because I've been in a fire before. And I learned not to burn." They don't look down on me in the store anymore. The saleswoman, another one, says, "Are you the gentleman who always wears a suit?" "Yes," I answer. "Always." The nurse in the hospital gives me her hand first. The neighbors greet me. The world hasn't become better, but it has become more attentive. I didn't destroy anything. I just let them see what was under the surface of their indifference. I don't have much time left, but I face each day with a straight back. Because now, when I sit on the veranda, there's not silence around me. There's respect around me, and I don't need words. I exist, and they do admit. And do you know what I left in my diary as the last entry? I did not demand worship, only humanity. He who underestimates old age brings his own defeat closer. Remember, the most dangerous blade is the one that has already been through 1,000 battles and is still sharp.
Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.